Way back on October 30th, 2021, Adult Swim dropped a concept pilot for a new show called Come and Learn with Pibby. At the time, Adult Swim didn't have high hopes for this concept, saying that they would be happy if it just got 1 million views. What they didn't know is that they would just drop one of the biggest things to ever touch the internet. Within only a week, Come and Learn with Pibby had already hit 10 million views. Not to mention the fact that it grew a massive fan base practically overnight. Fan art, reactions, and most importantly, people begging for more Pibby. Adult Swim had practically struck gold and they weren't even expecting it. With only a 2-minute concept trailer, they had an audience and they had demand for a product. I think we can all agree that there's only one logical step to take now: greenlight this series and capitalize off the popularity. So that's what they did, right? Right? Yeah, Come and Learn with Pibby might be one of the saddest stories of a concept that had so much potential and could have been great, but was just doomed to fail from the beginning. It went from being one of the most hyped up potential series that I've seen in years to just getting tossed to the side and honestly receiving a ton of hate at one point in time. So today we're going over what happened to Come and Learn with Pibby, why the show had potential, why did people just start hating on it, and why ultimately it just never was going to get greenlit. PSA, for the rest of this video, I will be calling this show Learning with Pibby because who actually calls it by its real name? But anyways, to understand the hype around Pibby and why people were so stoked on it, why people wanted to see this become a full-fledged series so badly, let me go over the pilot. The pilot starts off with this children's educational show like Blue's Clues or Dora the Explorer, and of course the show is led none other by our main character, Pibby. Then out of nowhere, this weird virus appears and starts consuming not only Pibby's friends, but the world around her. And this is where the appeal of Pibby really starts to sink in, as we see Pibby travel across all these different worlds from popular Cartoon Network shows. And in the process, all these popular IPs and characters are getting infected by this virus and turning into weird monstered versions of themselves. From the Powerpuff Girls to the Amazing World of Gumball to Adventure Time, Mordecai and Rigby from Regular Show, Ed, Ed, and Eddie. All these well-known characters made an appearance and turned into virus monster versions of themselves. The pilot basically ends setting up Pibby to go on this adventure alongside the remaining survivors of this cartoon apocalypse, where they fight the virus and try to save the universe. Now, like I said earlier, when Adult Swim first dropped this concept, it went viral instantly. The creator went on to say that Adult Swim really didn't expect much from the concept and was going to be happy with it if it would have just got 1 million views. Well, within a week it had 10 million views and is currently sitting just shy of under 40 million. And honestly, I'm really not that surprised. I feel like at the time when this trailer first came out, all the elements that made Pibby so good were in really high demand. But I feel like there are 2 reasons in particular that really shot Pibby to the moon. Number one, and probably the most obvious, is nostalgia. It's no secret that the biggest appeal to Learning with Pibby is the idea of seeing all these Cartoon Network properties come together and interact. Just in the 2 minutes alone that we saw, there were so many iconic and beloved characters that people would kill to see again. And as much as people want to deny it and say that they're getting nostalgia fatigue, there's a reason that so many iconic shows and properties that we all grew up on are either getting revivals or continuations. Adventure Time ended years ago, but here we are with Fiona and Cake, a movie on the way, and a new BMO show. Regular Show's coming back with a new series. The Amazing World of Gumball literally got a new series announced just a couple weeks ago. And it feels like every other day I hear the Steven Universe fans begging for a new series. Companies have been feeding audiences off of nostalgia for the last 5 years now, so it's really not a surprise that Pibby blew up in the way that it did. But the other thing that I think made Pibby blow up in the way that it did is the horror element. Horror has always been a popular media, and while everyone might not be a fan of the slasher murderer side of it or the ghost spiritual side of it, one genre that has always been popular, especially on the internet, is mascot horror. Things like Five Nights at Freddy's and cartoon creepypastas set up the groundworks for this subsection of horror to really grow, especially on the internet. People love the concept of taking these things that at surface value should be innocent and childlike and turning them into dangerous, monstrous, and horrifying things. Hell, Poppy Playtime is one of my favorite horror series of all time. So the idea of taking all these beloved, recognizable Cartoon Network characters and turning them into grotesque, horrifying monsters ready to kill you, I can see that being up anyone's alley. And if we're being honest, Pibby was the first one to actually do this, at least at an official level. Most mascot horror characters that we see are original characters created for the likes of being scary. Freddy Fazbear, Bendy from Bendy and the Ink Machine, Huggy Wuggy, all these characters were created for the intention of being scary. And while cartoon creepypastas have existed for years, Pibby was the first time that an official network really tapped into that type of energy when it comes to these characters. And on top of all that, the concept of some of these characters getting turned into horrifying glitch monsters is actually terrifying. Like, genuinely think about how terrifying it would be to see 3 infected Powerpuff Girls flying at you. Or maybe even worse, Finn and Jake. Finn is not a normal human and Jake is a magical dog that can stretch and just catch you. But I think you get a good idea as to why Pibby became so popular, and on top of becoming popular, it became popular really fast. Which in a way could have been a good thing. Obviously anyone who creates something wants it to not only become popular, but for it to become popular really fast. They want people to like it. Unfortunately though for Pibby, I feel like this was more of a negative than an actual positive. Because yes, initially the concept trailer was really well received. And even most people that weren't head over heels with the idea thought it was interesting. They thought it was a nice little thing to watch. But over time, the fans of Pibby actually started to turn people away from the idea of this actually becoming a full-fledged series. There were so many people running to the internet saying that Pibby was going to be the greatest show ever produced, that it was the greatest thing to ever drop on the internet in the last couple years. Basically just overhyping it to the moon, which honestly isn't even a crime. But if we know anything about the internet, anything that gets too popular too fast is bound to start receiving hate. And this was no exception. Because it genuinely feels like overnight, all the love that people had for the idea of learning with Pibby outside of the diehard fans, it went completely away. Now people were looking for anything from the concept to critique the show. From people saying that it was generic, saying that it was played out, saying that it was just an OC's fantasy. And while I agreed with not all the criticisms, but some of them, the switch up was still genuinely insane. And to a degree, I found it really unnecessary because let's be honest, a good majority of the diehard Pibby fans were kids, like literal children. So I think getting mad because kids that found something that they like are hyping it up, it's just kind of crazy. Like, it was never really that serious. But even with the new hate that Pibby was getting, there was still a lot of hype and there was still a lot of demand for a full-fledged series. So why did we never get one? Well, the creator Dodge Greenland would actually take to Instagram a month ago and give us some information about it. He went on to say, "When I released the trailer for Learning with Pibby in 2022, it seemed like all my hard work was worth it. Millions of people watched the video and fell in love with Pibby, and it seemed like she was destined to get a full TV show. I was told it was unprecedented. They had hoped for at best 1 million views, and she skyrocketed past 10 million in the first week. But Pibby still wasn't picked up for a full show, so the soul punching continued. We kept working, and when we finally pushed through, we took Pibby out to sell the show, and we pitched it the second week of the writer's strike. Tens of millions of views, 3 awards, but no one wanted original content." He ended the message by saying, "I have a few pieces of art for Pibby that I'd like to share with the world, but this is the end of her story for me," which is honestly just really sad. And I think one of the saddest things about it is in the comments, somebody asked, "What about making a comic book?" And he responded by saying, "Sadly, I don't own the rights to Pibby, so I can't make a comic book without Cartoon Network." I said earlier in the video that the biggest appeal of Learning with Pibby was the crossover, seeing all these Cartoon Network properties coming together and interacting, but I think that's also what ultimately doomed Pibby as a series. Look, I don't work in the boardrooms, I can't tell you the arrangement of things, but I can only imagine that Pibby, Learning with Pibby, would be a licensing nightmare. Unless Cartoon Network has 100% control over all the rights to the characters and they can do whatever they want with them at any point in time, I can't see how anybody would have approved Learning with Pibby, because it just seems like they would have to go through so much effort to license the rights to all these characters just for one Adult Swim show. And honestly, that's just a licensing perspective, because look, if I'm being honest, I personally like the concept of Learning with Pibby. I found it very interesting. But at the same time, I can understand why Adult Swim or Cartoon Network wouldn't greenlight this show. I brought up the idea of mascot horror and how I thought it was cool to see it with these characters on a semi-official stage, but at the same time, these are beloved characters. Like, these are characters that have shows out currently or will be getting shows out soon, and that the company is still trying to make money off of. And even though older people like you and me do tune in for some of these shows, at the heart of it, Cartoon Network is trying to appeal to younger younger demographics, mainly kids. That has always been their first priority. So as much as I hate to admit it, I could see why they wouldn't want most of these characters to be in this show. Like, a concept picture was released online with Courage the Cowardly Dog in the universe of Learning with Pibby, and it is graphic. Like, it is graphic, more graphic than most things that I've seen on Cartoon Network. Courage is literally getting impaled in the art. So if I own these recognizable characters and I'm trying to appeal to kids, I probably don't want anything under my brand where they're getting brutally murdered. Ultimately, I think Learning with Pibby is an unfortunate story about a cool concept that honestly was never really gonna see the light of day. Do I think it was the most original idea? No. Do I think it was heavily relying on nostalgia? Absolutely. But at the same time, it was interesting, and honestly, that's really all you need for a show. I feel like over time it really could have evolved into something really cool, and it's really unfortunate that we never really got to see it turn into anything or live up to its potential. But at least we'll always have that 2-minute trailer, and it will go down in internet infamy. But if you made it to the end, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and until then, it's been your boy Corin, and I'm off this.